Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. All right, next month will mark my 1 year anniversary since returning to the dating scene. You guys remember last year when I was offering a reward for anybody who could get me back in the scene, and it has turned beyond my wildest dreams. But something interesting also happened during my return to the dating scene. I discovered, to my initial dismay, that our society really doesn't encourage people to meet the right partner. It gives you a lot of stuff when you do meet the person, but there isn't a whole lot of support on the way there. It kind of reminds me of how our financial system works, right? There's not a whole lot of support if you want to go from 0 to a billion, but when you get there, there's a whole lot of support for you to keep it and to even multiply that 1 billion. It's probably a lot easier to go from 1 billion to a trillion than it is from 0 to a billion, right? The way we handle dating and marriage in the United States feels a lot like that, right? And so I would have a very difficult time getting time to go date, right? And similarly, the people I was dating was also having the same drama. And I also discovered something else. I discovered that the more I have, the more room I have to negotiate with, right? So 3 years ago, I didn't own any bismuth, and I had about half of the precious metals that I have today, and all that, right? Among other things. And I also didn't have a whole lot of standing at my job. Nowadays, if I want to take a day off to go on a date, I just announce it. I don't even feel like I'm asking for anything anymore, right? Another thing is that once I got that first, the reason I offered a huge reward for that first one was that once I had that first one under my belt, it became a lot easier to ask a second girl on a date, right? I felt like I had a floor to stand on, if you will, right? Which is why that first one was so important to me. What else did I notice? You get the idea, right? The more you have, the more room you have to negotiate. Now, I also learned. Hold on a second. I also learned that even if you don't have a whole lot of room to negotiate for a lot, you can start by negotiating for a few pennies. Why? Because those few pennies will make it easier to negotiate for a few nickels the next time. And those few nickels the next time will make it easier to negotiate for a few dollars the next time. Right? So you don't have to think. So for example, I was in a little bit of a mess earlier this year. I'm only an adjunct professor. I had lost one of my contracts. I was looking for additional work, and I found some work at a tutoring center. And now, the last time I worked at the last time I had a lot of experience at tutoring centers, it was in Seattle, Washington. Obviously, the pay is a lot higher, and we've had 5 years worth of inflation in between then and now, right? And so I wanted to negotiate the pay a little bit, and I knew I didn't have a whole lot of room because I was desperate at the time. But you know what? I did have a little bit of room to negotiate, a little bit. And remember, that little bit makes the next negotiation that much more powerful, right? It's like, I teach calculus, and students are always astonished by the exponential growth function, right? I remember one time I was showing the students the inverse of exponential, the logarithm function, and I asked the students, the students thought that the log function had an asymptote, right? It flattens out at a certain number, and I zoomed out and I showed them, and I asked them to think, how big would that graph have to be for the line to go to the roof of our school building, something like that. And we calculated that graph would have to be the size of the observable universe, right? So the point is that every little bit multiplies the next. Every negotiation you make today multiplies the next one you do tomorrow, is the point I wanted to make. Right. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.